Just totally missed.
I've done that. If you don't know, like, it's on, and then I go for a walk and just awake. And I'm like, well, I guess that's it.
Oh, amazing.
They're precarious little clips.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. They got a magnet too, which is kind of nice.
Okay. Mine do not have a magnet. Maybe I can attach a magnet. I feel like it's not a difficult thing to do.
No, I don't think so either.
That could be a nice thing to do.
A little bit of super glue and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Josh, cheers, man.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. What's it, have you done you've done some podcasts before?
This is my maybe 15th or 16th? Yeah.
What's it like for you the first time you come on a podcast?
You mean like the first one I did, or just any time?
Like any time, yeah. That was poor phrasing, but
I don't know. I guess I don't really. I feel very at the like a passenger. I'm just like, take me for a ride, because like I really don't know what to expect.
Totally.
I'm very open, and I don't. There's only one podcast I've been on where a person was like, here's the exact questions I'm asking you. Here's the itinerary. This is how long it's going to be.
Yeah.
If your answer goes past this, I will cut you off. I was like, oh,
Wow.
It was very interview style.
yeah,
It wasn't my favorite one because it
Okay.
wasn't very like free flowing.
totally.
But other than that, most people are like, here's about what we're going to talk about. It's 45 minutes. See you Tuesday.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I very much am like, cool. I'm just a passenger on this ride that you're taking me on. Let's see where it goes.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I feel like there's a degree of trust that's involved in that and openness as well. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming, how many people have you ferried through this journey?
Not that many. I've done most of the podcasts that I've done have been alone.
Okay.
And I feel like I have an understanding of what that process is like for me now.
Okay.
With guests, I think there's been 1, 2, 3, 4 guests. So you're the fifth.
Okay. I'll
Yeah,
take
so
it.
not that many, but it's like, for me, it's a lot about finding that balance between having structure and allowing the sort of like free-flowing nature of the conversation to really take hold.
Yeah.
So yeah, and with that in mind, like something I want to start the podcast off with is just, I'm curious, like what inspires you these days? What lights you up?
What lights me up? It's a great question. And think a sip of tea will help inspire me.
Of course.
Mostly like it's really hard to explain because for me, I don't think I have a grasp of it yet. It's like very amorphous in my mind, but the idea of growth,
Yeah.
like I can distill that down, or how anyone can, is like every time I feel like I'm getting closer to something. I don't know what that is, but it feels like love or something.
Yeah.
And it just feels really good. And as well as the closer I get to it, the more I'm uncovering and the further it also feels sometimes. So it's like, it's such an interesting journey, but that really lights me up. I do a lot of like Jungian and shadow work and like brotherhood work. I do a lot of IFS, or like Dick Schwartz talks about parts therapy. And so I do a lot of that, like understanding my inner parts and my inner children. And like every single time I do, I feel more gratitude for other people, more gratitude for myself, more love, and less resentment. And don't get me wrong, I still have those things, and there's still parts of myself, and I'm accepting myself for who I am. But the more I do, the more like this journey just feels lovelier. And I was just talking to a group of people the other day that like, the more I've been trying to force the square peg into a round hole, and how frustrating that's been with like businesses I've run or ventures I've gone on or sports I've tried to go into, I'm just like, it's just felt like I've been swimming upstream. And for the first time in my life, I've just been like really authentically being like, I'm going to be me, and I'm going to make some people upset, and then they're going to have to leave my life. And as terrifying as that is, like
Totally.
it ends up being really okay.
Yeah.
And now like the people that are coming in, it's just so easy. Things are going so easy right now. And so this is just really lighting me up. Like I wake up, I'm like, what's the next part of the journey that's going to open up and just make things easy?
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Oh, I mean, it answers questions and it opens up new ones, which is fantastic.
Great.
Yeah, there's a few things there. It seems to me like you mentioned one thing that really stood out to me, which was the compassion component for other people. The more work you do on yourself, which to me kind of like what resonates with me around that is that the more you kind of go into understanding who you are, and that's not always there's a degree of uncomfortableness and perhaps pain sometimes that's part of that process. But to me, that seems like it would then provide compassion and understanding for other people. Even if you don't know who they are, there's an understanding of like them having the same type of experience, even if it's not the same experience.
Yeah.
And feeling those things. You mentioned like IFSS. Is that what?
Just IFS.
IFS.
Internal family systems.
Could you elaborate on that? Because I feel like
I mean, I can try. I'm not a therapist in it at all. In
Totally.
fact, I have a therapist that guides me through it. But the process, from my understanding, so the two books that I read from Richard Schwartz is No Bad Parts
yeah,
and You Are Who You've Been Waiting For. And the idea is that we go in, so like all these voices we have, right? Like the voice that says like, you're not good enough, stop doing that, you're an idiot. Or even the ones that are like, keep going, tiger, like whatever. They're all these parts of us. And even Gabor Mate talks about like the traumas and the splitting that happens at a young age. And so I've got these parts in me.
yeah,
One of them I call Carrot Pants Josh, because I can remember that I had a little pair of like cargo pants, and on the pockets were pictures of carrots, and I loved those pants as a kid.
Yeah.
And that is a very playful version of myself, and that kid just wants to play. And so I had that part of me. And growing up, I had to like mask a lot. Like if I was too disruptive in class, I got in trouble. If I was too disruptive at home, I got in trouble. And so I had to like take that Carrot Pants Josh and be like, not now. Now's not the time. Be quiet, or you won't get the love you want. You won't get accepted in class. You're not going to get the stickers on the wall like Jenny and Craig and Steven have. So if you want those things, you have to take this version of yourself and stuff it down.
yeah,
And so I learned at a very young age to mask many parts of myself. And so now there's a protector that protects that small child that just wants love, just wants to be seen as a playful version of itself. And so now in the IFS, I go in, if I feel comfortable doing so, I close my eyes and I ask the protector, hey, you've been doing such a good job of protecting this version of myself for so long. You've helped me stay quiet when I needed to stay quiet. Would you mind stepping aside for just a moment while I talk to Carrot Pants Josh? And if it works and that feels good and that protector's like, I can take a bit of a vacay. I can sit down and have some tea or whatever my mind manifests in that moment. And then if they do, then I can go talk and play with that child. And I've been doing that more and more. And so in the way I see it in my mind, there's like many different safe spaces that I go into. One is like this cool, probably because I grew up watching The Simpsons. There's an episode called The Lemon Tree,
yeah,
where Abe Simpson, Grandpa Simpson, sitting in the rock, and he's telling all the kids about the lemon tree. And that's one of the safe spaces where I have all my kids and I'm reading them stories and books because I didn't get a lot of that. And I'm telling them all like, you're doing great, you're doing awesome. Like, so that's an area where I play with them. There's another one where it feels like a sound booth recording studio where the protectors go sit in the quiet space while I go and like have a fun session of creativity and playfulness with the other parts of myself.
And so will you be in the process of creative, because it sounds like you kind of do this internally. Like these are internal places.
It's very internal, yeah.
When you're interacting with those more playful aspects of yourself, Carrot Pants Josh, and the other aspects that are there, are you also then in this like world, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the process of creativity, maybe writing something for stand-up like I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm asking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the first couple times, no, right? Because Carrot Pants Josh, that version of him was just stuffed down too far.
Yeah.
Now I'm accessing that part of myself when I'm doing certain things. So I can access him in certain areas where it feels safe and comfortable. Because Carrot Pants Josh is great for writing comedy. Carrot Pants Josh is great when I'm playing with toys or doing Lego. Like, it's so much fun to have him around.
Yeah.
And I can just like, whoa, like I can just, like I feel even now, like just the welling up in my eyes, like it feels really freeing. But also there's some places where it's like not safe to have that kind of playfulness. Like for example, in the bedroom, like that Carrot Pants Josh isn't the right age to be playful in the bedroom. He's very good and playful in other areas. And so he manifests and I access him in different areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of awareness and intentionality in what you're describing.
Yeah, I think I have to be.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm pretty new to it. I'm learning still, and that's why I have a therapist that walks me through
Of course.
it, and a book that I read, and podcasts. There is like a podcast all about parts therapy, which I highly recommend people go like Google into if they like that kind of stuff, or if you do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's again, kind of, I'm trying to reiterate what I'm hearing from you, and then also point us in a little bit of a direction with it.
Sure.
And so what I'm curious about, because what I'm hearing is having this awareness of the different aspects of kind of who you are, and then the nurturing the ability to be intentional about when to bring out the right parts. And by right, I mean the ones that are most in line with what you're wanting for a specific moment, because right and wrong,
Yeah, subjective.
wrong. Exactly. But I'm really curious because I feel like this isn't something that a lot of people are necessarily engaging in very consciously. I think a lot of us are very unconscious and reactive in terms of which parts of ourselves we bring out, especially in the business world.
Mm-hmm.
Business, a lot of people, it's easy for self-worth to come from something like business, and there's a lot of both a strong desire to be successful, and there's fear around not being successful, not performing well in the business world. And so these two things, both the strong desire and the strong fear, can, I think, put people into more of like a fight, flight, or freeze state of mind while engaging in work on a daily basis. Like, get all caffeinated up. I mean, I love coffee, you know what I mean? Get caffeinated up and just start working. And I don't know if it's the best way to work when you're in that state of mind. And I find it really interesting to think about what you're talking about here, about being intentional, about understanding the different parts of yourself, and then being intentional about, okay, which one's actually the best for the task or the activity that I'm about to engage in. And you mentioned earlier business and life in general starting to feel more easy, almost like you're in flow a little bit more. And I'm curious how those two things that play together, the awareness and intentionality, and then also being in more of a state of flow or ease, even while growing and doing things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah. For my growth, and I think this is for a lot of people, there's sort of like three aspects to it that I look at, which is awareness, integration, action. And you mentioned that it seems like a lot of people just aren't aware. And I think that that's extremely true, which is why people fall back in, like, I know it for myself, like I'll find myself falling back into similar patterns. And I'm like, oh, there's that thing I keep doing. Whether it's self-sabotage, whether it's like a fear or just a voice, it's like, you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, okay, I won't. And it's like, oh, like, if I can't catch that in the moment, when can I catch it? And if I can catch it 3 days later, can I start to catch that 2 days later, and then 1 day later, and then in the moment, and then once anyone can be aware of that, like, so if I can be aware of, oh, okay, when I think about going up on stage, when I think about playing guitar in front of an audience, when I think about submitting that application for the job that I want, that's when the voice comes up. And if I can catch, you're not good enough, you don't deserve this, whatever it is, that voice being like, oh, we've had to push that down because that keeps us safe. Because it works, right? Like, even when people drink alcohol, it might not be the best tool in the world, but it works, right? It does suppress whatever, numbs, whatever it needs to do, so it works. Rather than focusing in on the actual awareness of, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Why is the voice coming up in the first place? And so awareness is the first one. And then once we're aware, we can start to integrate that part of us, the part of us that, like, maybe we're ashamed of, that part of us that maybe has been shut down. And, like, I mean, a lot of people struggle to talk about sexual stuff. People struggle to talk about, like, just normal body functions. Like, people, I don't want to talk about poo. I don't want to, it's very normal. Totally. It's just part of our life, right? And so, like, learning to just accept, like, hey, I'm a sexual being, or hey, I'm a person that likes to do A, B, and C, and I'm scared, like, and just accepting that and integrating that part of ourselves, like, oh yeah, like, I do have these thoughts and these emotions, and is that okay? That maybe I have suicidal ideations from time to time. Do other people have these too? But if I don't say them ever and I don't accept them, I'm rejecting self. And the more I reject self, the further, like, that's the swimming upstream, right? But the more I can integrate, and so that's the second part of just, like, what are my parts? When the awareness comes up, what is it actually happening? Like, when it's saying, I'm not good enough for this job. It's like, okay, why do I feel that way? Where did that come from? Can I trace it back? Okay, I really tried hard to get love from my mom or a teacher, or why was I pushed so hard as a kid, or whatever it happens to be. It's like, okay, integrate the fact that I want love. I wanted to be accepted and I felt unaccepted. And so I've fought so hard to be accepted and I'm sick of trying so hard. And so there's anger there, there's frustration there. I'm going to accept these, that I have anger, that I have frustrations, that I do feel not as worthy, and that I seek it outwardly rather than inwardly. And then once I integrate, now I can start taking action steps. And those action steps only, like, it has to go in that order.
Awareness,
Integration,
action.
Because if I'm aware of it and then I don't accept any of the parts, that's the action is then swimming upstream. But if I'm not aware and I'm like, I'm a good person, I'll integrate that, and then action steps are this, I'm not even in the stream anymore. I'm probably walking through a forest somewhere, not even aware of what's going on. And so it's like, I have to be aware of what's happening in my life and why these things are happening and why these patterns continue. Then I have to integrate those parts of myself that I'm ashamed of, that I'm frustrated by, that other people don't accept. And then action of like, okay, what do I want to do with this now? I do want that job. I don't feel worthy of it. What is the safest place I can start? And like one of the stories I talked about in a TED Talk was that I was a background performer because I was too scared to go for auditions. I was told I wasn't good enough. I didn't have a good look. And I was like, okay, well, where's the safest? They're like, well, you can just do this background. Like, you don't have to audition. You get the job pretty much guaranteed, and you get to just walk around on set and see how it works. I'm like, that seems really easy. And so I did that. And I apply that to so many different aspects of my life of like, what's the absolute easiest and safest place to start? And so I do that in business as well. Gurdjieff even talks about how you can set up a chair in the middle of a room once a day and just stand on it for 20 seconds. He's like, that's the easiest place because that helps you build integrity. You're like, I'm going to do this thing. It seems silly. It seems dumb, but I'm doing it. And then you start to trust that you can do the things you said you would do.
Yeah.
Even if it's that simple.
That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Have a sip.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Tea time.
Tea time. Have some water.
This tea is delicious. Very herbal.
Nice, yeah. I'm like, it doesn't say herbal on the package, but I'm pretty sure it's herbal. It's flowers. It's probably like...
Well, we'll notice right away. I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine. So.
They said no caffeine.
Oh, then yeah, we're good then.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. What may I ask you? Like, what fires you up? Like, when you're like, what are you passionate about? What gets you up? Where you're like, this has to happen.
Yeah, it's funny when you talked about what fires you up. It seemed, and I will answer your question.
You can take a roundabout way. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it seemed like there was it was both vague in terms of what fires you up, but it seemed physical in some way. Like you can feel more alive as you move towards what you said is growth, but growth is super broad.
So broad. I mean, I wish I could be like tennis. Like, I wish it could just be something so simple where like I can get up, I can hit that ball, and I can do this 800 times a day. But currently, this time in my life, I'm noticing the more I focus on like self-love and myself and that version of growth and starting to understand myself more and getting into that authenticity, the more everything else seems to work. Mm-hmm. And that's great. Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah.
But I digress. Back to you.
No, not at all. It's a conversation. Goes back and forth.
Yes, it does.
What fires me up, what lights me up, there's so many aspects of that. It's hard to say, oh, it's just this or it's just this. I have a strong inclination. I'm really drawn towards understanding things, understanding the world, but in relation to allowing that to enhance my growth. So there's a growth that's a part of what fires me up. Like, I love growth in general, just like you. Yeah. And I think it's super sort of fundamental to I think everybody. Like, we all love progression is what feels really good. Like when I started rock climbing or longboarding or whatever, whenever I start something, the progression's so fast. And it becomes, not always, but like in things that I have a natural tendency towards, and it becomes very addicting and it feels really good. And when you plateau, you start to be like, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep struggling? Progression feels great, and progression is growth. However, growth is also in the plateaus. Like, that's also a part of it. What I'm trying to get at here is that I think we're wired to expand our awareness of our environment, because the more we understand about our environment, the more capable we become of working with it versus blindly struggling against it. And like you can see that in terms of, you know, how people have like moved across the continents over thousands and thousands of years, like continuously like going into the next valley. You know, when people first crossed the Alaskan Strait from Asia into North America and eventually traveled all the way down through to South America, like that is growth, that is exploration. And I'm trying to understand, how can I grow in a way that is aligned with who I am, really well. And that like, it's a broad, vague question, but it really fires me up. And there's so many aspects of that. It's like both like looking outside into the world, and like whenever I interact with something, like, okay, how am I responding to this in terms of like, how does it make me feel? You know, does it give me more energy? Does it take energy away? But also, is this relevant to my life in some capacity? And so there's a practicality that comes with that as well. But then at the same time, looking inwards and being like, okay, reflecting on my past, like what got me excited when I was a kid or in university or now, and how am I interacting with the world, and how am I feeling versus how I think I'm capable of feeling on a day-to-day basis. And that gets me really excited because it gets me really excited because I think everyone has the same potential, not the same, and I'll clarify it after, but the same potential for greatness, completely, 100%. But I think that the only way that you can inspire others towards their greatness is by embracing whatever yours is and walking that path. And so there's an element of that I've kind of aligned with myself of like, okay, I need to uncover my own greatness, and I need to walk that path. And in doing so, like, I really hope to inspire others in that journey. So that's kind of what gets me fired up.
Nice. Yeah, like sounds like if you do your version of it, you give people permission.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is great. Also, it sounds like you're very curious. Like a big part of that is your own curiosity.
For sure. Curiosity and like a desire to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool, man. Good answer.
Yeah.
Also very vague.
Totally.
Because I don't know how to define. Like I think it's like almost impossible thing to define, because the more we uncover, the more there is to uncover.
Yeah. Do you mean growth, or what fires you up when you
growth?
Say
growth.
Yeah, growth. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Just because, like, I mean, like the way like a Zen Buddhist would look into growth versus the way someone who wants to do 5-MeO DMT wants to define growth versus someone who like. Yeah, there's just so many different ways that people find the path of their curiosity and the way they want to grow. I love that you want to relate it into the world and the way it interacts with you. Like, I think that's lovely. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just it's a tough, amorphous beast to tackle, but totally worth it.
For sure. I mean, I think it's a very like, it's an experiential thing. Mm-hmm. Which is why you need to take action, right? And you need to do things. And that's also why I think having, like what you talked about, really lowering the barriers, what's the easiest possible thing I can do?
Yeah.
Because that initiates growth, and then it also opens up the next possible easiest thing once you've become comfortable in that place.
Yeah. There's a book called The Innovation of Everything, and in it they have this analogy where it's like you're in a room with 3 doors. Like, you open the door, that door is like the first part of progression. And he uses dial-up modems at the time. It's like there was a whole bunch of different companies that were basically YouTube before YouTube was YouTube. And the next door to open that was much better bandwidth, right? Like DSL download speeds going way faster. And so all these companies existed and had like, we do like uploads, but it was like 58K modems at the time, which no one's gonna upload or download anything at that speed video-wise. And so that door didn't exist yet. And so there was easier doors and that needed to exist before that happened. But once that door opened, YouTube just happened to be there at a time. I was like, and the door's open. And then like all of innovation is just everything we already have, just kind of rearranged and adjusted often, which is a really beautiful like analogy of like which doors are going to open the next door, which is going to open the next door. Like, it's just, and away the doors go.
What doors have you opened recently?
I think through IFS, like the understanding of what I really want is a big door.
That's a huge door.
Yeah, it's a really big door of like, I think I wanted to be, like I wanted to be an artist since I was young. I've always wanted to make people laugh and be on stages. Like when I was in grade 4, I was very disruptive And they pulled me into this big meeting, and they said that if I behave throughout the week on Friday, they will like close school early and allow me to perform a puppet show. And so I got to perform a puppet show in front of the school every Friday as long as I behaved. And so like I had to like bottle up a lot of my feelings throughout the week, but then I could pour all of that into the creativity of this show that I got to create. And all of the other students were like, "Can I be a guest star on it?" I was like basically making my own little SNL puppet show every
beautiful.
Friday.
That's
It was
crazy.
I loved it. But then as I grew up, I started to lose that part of myself, and like societal pressures got on me, and I was like, okay, I've got to make money, I've got to get a job. So I started like running businesses and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I loved traveling. And so I kept trying to add all these different businesses in, and creativity kept just knocking at the door. So I'd like pour creativity into the business and make this really creative version of a business that maybe had no place being creative. And yeah, and then now I'm like, all I want to do is keep creating and be creative and like honor that part of myself. And so I'm integrating that creative version of myself. So I'm just like making more videos, editing more things, being like fun. Like when I have the funny voices, like this would be funny, instead of being like, oh no, like I don't know. Like I'm just like, let's do it. Let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. And so that has been a big door that opened for me, is just like this creative version of myself that I think I've like stuffed down for too long, that is now coming back out, and I'm really loving it. And a lot of other people are like really flocking to it, which feels great.
Yeah. Being authentic seems like a real magnet for what's best for you.
Yeah.
Which is fucking incredible.
Yeah. But it's also hard because in that authenticity, I'm a human that wants connection.
Yeah.
I don't know many humans that don't, but there's definitely like a huge part of me that like loves connection, and sometimes to my own detriment. Like I will prioritize connection with someone over my own needs and wants sometimes, and that's another thing that I'm learning to like put my boundaries up to. And so the hard part is, in my authenticity, I lose people that were like, oh, I thought you were the other guy. And you're like, I was, but that wasn't really me. And so having to step away from some of those relationships feels scary for me. And beautiful because I get to step into myself. And then like all these other people start, it basically makes room for all these other people, which is...
What's it been like?
I cry a lot. Like it's just a lot of tears throughout the day, because there's like grief is a big part of this, because I'm grieving that version of myself. I'm grieving all the relationships that I loved. I'm grieving the part of me that is now coming up, that I'm like so sorry that I kept you down for so long. And the interesting thing about me and grief is that I always want to do something about it. I'm very much like a doer. So I'm like, oh, like so when grief and sadness come, I'm like, okay, how can I fix this? How can I not feel this? But the thing I'm realizing about grief is that all it needs is to sit with it. Do nothing. Just be with it, experience the emotions, experience the feelings, and allow them to flow through me. And that they can feel overwhelming most of the time. And so, yeah, I think that to answer your question into one thing is, it's overwhelming in the most beautiful way.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh. There's an idea in Zen Buddhism of like a guy on a river in a boat, and he's rowing upstream. Obviously, it sounds hard to row upstream. And then he takes one of the oars and puts it into the boat, and then uses the other one as a rudder. And he starts flowing with the power of the entire river. And it sounds to me like that's what you're discovering for yourself in life right now.
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think so. I think I think I took the oar out and was like, all right, I'm just gonna steer.
The oar. Oh, yeah. I was like, the oar. I heard that as in like O-R.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, what oar are we talking about?
Yeah, sorry.
I forgot what I just told you, I guess.
Right, you're like, I forgot I just told you a story about a boat with oars.
Yeah, totally.
Which is good because you're very present. You're present to literally what's happening in the story.
I guess so.
I did want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I'm curious if this happened to you, because it sounds like you did a lot of sports or do a lot of sports. Mm-hmm. And something that happened for me, I pick things up really quickly. And it sounded like from what you said, you do as well. And something that happened to me that I found really difficult as a kid growing up is that I would join a sport or an activity, and I would be really good at it pretty quickly. And the coaches would jump on me and be like, you're going to be good, let's go. And what I found really difficult in that is that, again, you can think about Carrot Pants Josh that wants love, acceptance, and support, is I got this person breathing down my neck that's making me work 10 times harder than everybody else. And I would see somebody else like make all the same mistakes that I'm making, and they'd be like, a good job, keep going. And I would get the, come on, you got to be better. You got to do, what are you doing? Like, come on, let's go. And I found like that actually turned me off from so many sports and so many opportunities, was these people like breathing down my neck to be stronger, be better. Like they're holding me to the standard that I'm like, I didn't ask to be held to the standard. And which actually then shot me into the trajectory of like single person sports. So that's why I snowboard, wakeboard, and do stuff like that, because I'm like, I don't want to be on these teams with these people yelling at me, because I also have this like intense version of fairness in me. So when two people do the exact same thing and one person does a good job and the other person's like, work harder, like I'm just like, these alarm bells go off, I get angry. That's a part that I need to integrate with myself, because for a long time I needed to be like, just try to accept it. And now I'm like, no, like that's fucking mean, like unfair, and you're hurting a version of me, you're hurting that person. And so I'm curious what your experience has been like with that, if that ever happened or...
Not at all.
Not at all.
But
all right.
I think my imagination says that you were a little bit, like you had an intensity to you as well as a kid when you were playing sports.
Sure, yeah.
Like you had a natural ability to learn quickly, and my assumption is that there was like an intensity when you played. Yeah?
Yeah.
I had the natural ability to learn quickly, but I was very like easygoing and relaxed, and I just wanted to like hang out and play, versus like I didn't have my competitive drive wasn't as strong. For some reason, I had so much, like I would have so much empathy for other teams.
Just go get them, guys.
Yeah,
that's
like,
a lovely skill, though.
It is, and like it, yeah, for sure. Like I'm not shitting on it, but it's just that I think actually took attention away from me.
Okay.
Because that fire wasn't there. And it's funny because like there was no thought, like I just wanted to play, and I just wanted to. Have you read the book Finite and Infinite Games before?
No.
It's incredible.
All right, it's on the list.
It's an incredible book. It's kind of crazy, and the more you read through it, the kind of wackier it gets. But essentially, he breaks down. There's two types. Like he kind of explains these two frameworks of finite and infinite games, and lays out the general structure and the rules and how they're different. So a finite game, for example, is bounded. There's a definitive beginning, a definitive ending. There's a winner. There's a loser, and everything within that game is towards the ends of like finishing the game,
right,
and winning. And so there's a certain degree of seriousness required for finite games, because you need to take on the seriousness of like, this is the game. When it ends, everything is over.
Okay.
And that you can see in sports, in life, in
board
career,
games,
everything.
Yeah.
An infinite game. So within infinite game and infinite game, there are many, many finite games. And so while you're playing an infinite game, the purpose isn't to finish the game, but the purpose is to keep play going.
Okay.
Anyway, so I would love to just like when I played with friends, we'd like throw a ball back and forth. It was never about like me winning. It was always just about like, how can we change the rules to continue allowing us to play?
Yeah.
And I enjoyed playing like FIFA against friends of mine who would kick my ass all the time, but I was always so fired up to play again, and like I didn't even mind. So I guess roundabout answer, but I can't fully relate. But eventually, through climbing and through hockey a little bit later on, I kind of learned how to try hard for the sake of that and be a little bit more competitive. And then also stepping into the sales world, I've like had to integrate this competitive aspect that wasn't as natural to me at a younger age, but I find just as much joy in it now. And I kind of try and use the competitiveness to make me better. It's less about needing to be better than others and more just about how can I continue to grow in the same way that these people are around me, and match them, because why couldn't I match them in what they're doing?
Yeah. Nice. It's a very healthy way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have aspects of that now where I just enjoy the game. Like Carcassonne is a board game that I play with friends, and I don't think I've won a single game, which is fine. They're just smarter. They get the game, and but I enjoy playing,
Yeah.
and so because it helped me to see other people like either play a video game or like get really upset when they lost. And I was like, oh, I don't like that feeling that
Totally.
I'm seeing when I experience this person doing that, and so over time I've gotten better, and I definitely which is why when I moved to single person sports, it's now just about me. Like I just want to grow for myself.
Yeah.
So like when I do a trick, I'm like, I don't care if other people are doing the trick or not. I don't care if I'm just riding down. It's just fun. I just enjoy the fun of it. But I still have parts of me that get frustrated. And so I think parts of that are still there, and I'm still learning those parts.
Of course.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when there's been a recent shift for me where when I'm frustrated, it's not frustrating.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Explain more.
It becomes like curiosity is the response to frustration.
Good answer. Yeah.
Like, what? Oh, I'm pissed off right now. No way. Like, what's pissing me off? And I think that's like the moments where we feel negative emotions. We can choose to respond with a negative emotion, which then just digs us deeper into it. Or we can choose to respond with like curiosity or playfulness. And that, to me, is more of an exploration of the thing without it necessarily even being a bad thing.
Right.
Like, what can I learn from this negative? Like, I remember in Australia, I was at the gym and there was this guy that was climbing and I was climbing. And, like, in my mind, I was a better climber than this guy. And that day, he was just doing all this shit and I had no chance of doing. Like, I was just unable to do what he was doing. And I was so pissed off about it. I'm like, fuck this guy. Like... I've been putting in so much work. I've been trying so hard and like I'm just not able to do this stuff. What the hell? And I went home and I was like, damn, like this is so silly. I shouldn't be frustrated. And then at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I put a lot of time into this. I put a lot of energy to this. Like it's a part of who I am at this point. It's okay for me to feel a little bit like annoyed.
Yeah.
And after that, it kind of went away on its own, which was just this allowing it to be okay.
Yeah, the acceptance of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without the like shame around it or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just acceptance, like this is an emotion, not good or bad. It's just an emotion. Here it comes. Hello, emotion. Thank you. Life goes on.
And I find this shit so interesting in relation to business because in some way we're all in business, right? We're all working and trying to make money and
Capitalism.
yeah, for sure.
We have to.
It's a part of where we're at in like society and culture and time. But I just find it fascinating because I think that it's possible to be authentic, to be yourself, to grow financially and in business, as a business or as a member of a business, and feel good versus it being super intense and stressful.
Yes.
I think it's possible, and I don't know how many people spend time there.
Yeah, and like sometimes that possibility, I actually don't know, and this maybe is just an open question. How much of that is based on the environment and how much is that based on your own mindset? Like, what if you are in a really toxic environment?
For sure.
And you're like, is there a point where it becomes delusional where I'm like, optimism, positive mindset, and people are just like literally sabotaging me on a daily basis because they're like, you suck, you're garbage, you're this, versus like having a really positive environment that's just like really like beautiful and nurturing and supportive. And then so that even when I make a mistake, it's like, oh, no worries, man. Like everybody makes mistakes. Let's keep at it. And so, yeah, I think I'm answering my own question as I talk. It's just like, yeah, like I think a supportive environment can be that much more conducive to the growth that comes along in the business world.
Sure.
Because without it, yeah, if you're in a toxic environment, regardless, I think they use that crab bucket mentality thing where it's like people are climbing on top of each other. But then when you pull back and look at the environment, it's like, well, how did they get in that bucket in the first place? That bucket is not a place for crabs to be. Put them in the ocean, they're fine.
Yeah.
Right? So like, how can we take, in any business environment, how can you take yourself out of the bucket?
Totally.
How can you take everyone in your environment out of that bucket? Because I think a lot of us get stuck in that bucket.
Yeah, if it's a toxic environment, for sure. If it's a toxic bucket.
Yeah.
Then the bucket can become topics versus...
Yeah. Yeah, just versus like no bucket at all. You have this nice, open, do your thing, explore. It's a safe. You're not going to be fired if you make one or two mistakes or don't hit your quota. It's okay, but like what we would like to do is have an open dialogue of what you think's going on, where you're struggling. There was this sales coach that came in and was talking to a specific guy who was doing really poorly in business. And he just gave him this like one thing to do. And he was like, I don't want you to go into any of your sales meetings from now on and sell. I just want you to get to know them really, really well. And it wasn't about relationship selling. He was just like, all I want you to do is find out as much information about them as a person. He said, you can sell nothing for the rest of the year. You'll have a job, but I just want you to know them. And he ended up becoming like the best salesperson by the end of the year.
That's incredible.
Because he was just super curious. He kept asking him questions about the family, the life, and what he would find out eventually after a couple months, because at first it was not great. Like it was like 3 months of nothing. But then eventually, in knowing so much about them, he was able to like be inquisitive and like, hey, like I thought you wanted this and I thought your daughter was doing this, and what happened to that? And he's like, oh, well, yeah, you're right. Wait a minute. Okay. And then the conversation shifted because he just knew so much about these people.
Yeah.
And so he just spent like half-hour phone calls asking them questions about themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Versus being like, oh, so your company needs A, B, and C? Well, we can provide A, B, and C. So here's the contract. What's the holdup? And it's like, oh, okay.
100%, man. I think sales is such a fun game to test these things out, because to me it's such an obvious game of like there's a super clear goal, there's a super clear target, but if you focus too much on it, you don't move towards it, you move further away from it.
Yeah.
There's a Taoist philosophy called Wu Wei. I don't know if I've talked about it with you before.
You haven't, but I love Taoism, and I've read Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. I have it.
Have you heard about Wu Wei? Yeah,
please tell everyone.
Oh my god, dude, it's fucking fantastic. I mean, it's essentially that. It's like you hold on too tightly, you move further away from what you're trying to move towards. And it also speaks to me with what you were talking about earlier of like sort of following the natural course of things.
Yeah.
And when you are in line with that, there's that ease element to life that I think is accessible. I think we've moved so far away from it as a society that it can sound crazy for someone to hear that. Like, can things really be easy?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that things are going to be easy. Like, there's still going to be problems that are going to be emotional and that are going to be challenging. But the way that we engage with that, like if we step into that slowly and consciously, it's like moving and like walking into water versus fucking belly flopping into every problem that comes our way.
Yes.
Like, that is a difference for sure.
It was so painful.
Yeah.
But you still have to get into the water. You still have
gotta
to
go
swim.
through it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, one is going to be a belly flop. One, you're like tied to a tree as you're trying to jump into the water. You're like, why can't I get there? Yeah. And I think like even that comes up in like relationships a lot, where it's like for me, like I'll ask someone out on a date, for example, and I'll be like, hey, do you want to do rock climbing? Do you want to do cold dipping? Do you want to do snowboarding? And it's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, what? And then then I start, I'm like, well, what do you want to, and then all of a sudden, and it becomes harder. Whereas when I let it just flow, people are like, hey, Josh, do you want to come snowboarding with me? Hey, Josh, do you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, those are things I'm already doing. Why don't I just keep doing these things? It becomes easy. I'm still doing the things. I'm still waking up early. I'm still grabbing my gear. I'm still going to the ocean and jumping in. And those are, like you said, all challenging. But it becomes so easy when I, like, instead of like, do you want to do...
I need to try and do this thing with this person.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
time
Just like, letting it go.
Yeah. And it's the letting go. You talked about this the other day with me when we were over at dinner, but like it's scary to let go.
It's terrifying.
Because you're giving up, and I don't actually believe, like, you're giving up a false sense of control.
Correct.
Because you don't actually have control of the outcome.
We never do.
Exactly. But when you let go of trying to force an outcome, then you end up, because I think you end up at like what is ultimately like a better outcome. And that doesn't mean don't try, right? It doesn't mean don't try. But there's a certain, like, the art of trying, I think, is fascinating. Like, how do you try hard, but not like white knuckle?
Yeah.
But how do you still put in like effort? Maybe there's a difference between effort and like forcing an outcome.
Yeah, and I don't have the answer to that. But
Totally.
what resonated me for there, again, it comes back to your ore story, where you're just like, I can see like someone's worked so hard. They're exhausted, and they look back and it's right there. They're like, I'm so close. Why would I you want me to let go of this aura? It's like, I don't want you to do anything. I want you to be happy, and I want you to be restful, and I want you to go in the direction that makes sense. But what I want's right there. It's like, maybe, I don't know. I can't tell you what you do and don't want, but just from my own experience, when I pulled that aura up and started and just went with the current,
Yeah.
I just realized that it's circular, and I came the other way too, and I was like, oh, it was so much easier. And so, yeah, even there's something that happened to me about 5-10 years ago. I used to really reject woo-woo stuff, like the idea of like certain meditations or certain Eastern practices, for example. I would just be like, oh, like astrology. I'm like, I don't believe in that stuff. Or the best way to do this, the best example would be manifestation. Say I want this and the universe will provide. I was like, I don't believe in that. If I want something, I have to go get it. That's been my whole life. Why would that change now? And I rejected it for 20 years of my life. And then around 25, I was like, this is the silly part, and this is why I almost was frustrated. I was frustrated with myself. I gave it a try, and it worked. And I was like, that's so dumb. It's so dumb that it works, because it seems so easy.
Yeah.
And the second, it was just letting go of the oar, because I saw it right there and I was paddling. And it was once I let go, I was like, oh, there's so many different ways to get what I want.
Yeah.
And the way I was just so focused, white knuckle gripping it in this, it has to be, this is the way I want to get it, only this way. And once I let it go, and I was frustrated that I couldn't have let it go earlier, other people told me manifestation works, and I was like, and it would never have hurt me to just prove them wrong. Why didn't I just try to prove them wrong? And then I did, and I tried to prove them, and they proved me wrong. And I was like, oh man, my life is so much better now. And so yeah, it's and even in Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, there's a story about a local eatery or pub that everybody wants to go to, and they're trying to get in. There's a donkey outside, and it's kicking everybody, and they're trying to get in. They can't. And someone tries to pull the donkey, but it's stubborn and it won't move his ground. And someone tries to give it food, and they keep trying all these different things to get in. And then Lao Tzu comes oh, here, Lao Tzu's he'll know what to do. And then he just walks around to the back of the bar and walks in the back door. And you're like, of course. There's so many different ways to get where we want. Why was I so focused on the front door? Yeah.
Blinders, eh?
Yeah.
Blinders. I think again, when you're in that more of a fearful fight or freeze, strong desire, strong fear state, then the blinders do come on more. But when you're relaxed, then you can see out multiple options a little bit more, be more creative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just as we wrap up here, is there anything that you want to share, mention, or bring up before we kind of...
One of the guys from Monty Python talks about creativity and how creative people can... the reason they're almost more creative is because they can sit in problems longer, and our desire to fix problems right away. And I'm guilty of this all the time. Something pops up, I immediately want to fix it, and I'm like, there, it's fixed, I'm done, I'm good. And really, that's a version of avoidance, right? I have a feeling, or thing happens, I have a feeling, I don't want to feel this feeling anymore, so I fix the problem. But I haven't sat or done anything with this feeling yet. And what he talks about is that creative people will have a problem. They won't necessarily want to or need to fix it right away, so they'll sit with it. And being able to sit in that discomfort for long periods of time allows so much creativity to flow, and creative people tend to come up with way more interesting solutions to things because they weren't problem, fix, done, next.
Yeah.
How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. Yeah.
All right.
I find I often problem solve with the path of least resistance. With certain things, and that can bite me in the ass sometimes, and there's an element of speed to it, and rushing. Rushing has been my greatest downfall in life for sure. But yeah, I was at the gym yesterday, and I was like, or was it yesterday? Yeah, and I wanted to get this all set up for the recording today, and I went to the gym half an hour later than I intended to, and then the activity that I had planned for 3:30 was now moved up to 3:00, and things were shifting around, and there would have been a time in the past where I would have white knuckled and gripped things tighter and rushed a little bit more. And for some reason at the gym yesterday, I just decided not to rush. I'm going to take my time and enjoy this session fully. And if I don't get everything done today, that's fine. I could get it done tomorrow. But I'm not going to rush myself because I'm in a worse state when I am, and I don't do things as well. Yeah.
Nice, man. That's great.
Yeah.
And look, everything worked out great.
Yeah, it worked out fucking fine.
Yeah, it always does.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Tristan.
it.
Thanks
Yeah.
for having me. This is great.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Nice. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was super fun.